Hey everyone, welcome back to Luna's Truths. Today, I'm sharing a fascinating story about a couple whose marriage didn't quite fit the traditional mold, but in their own way, they made it work. It's the story of Sue and Jean and how their love story slowly shifted into something very unexpected. So, grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's dive in. Sue first met Jean while she was working in a small department store in town. He was shy, gentle, and not at all the kind of man people thought she would fall for. But for Sue, that was exactly what made him special. Jean wasn't loud or flashy. He wasn't the type to try to impress anyone. Instead, he was thoughtful, attentive, and completely devoted to her from the very beginning. Sue quickly realized she wanted him in her life forever. Only 6 months after their very first date, Sue decided to take matters into her own hands. Instead of waiting for him to propose, she popped the question during dinner at a little family rest. Jean blushed, but he didn't hesitate. He said yes. When Sue took Jean to meet her parents, who lived on a farm, things got interesting. Jean had never been on a farm before. He was amazed by the animals, the barn, and the hard work that went into farm life. Sue's father, though, was a little unsure. He asked his daughter if Jean was really the man she wanted to marry. He thought Jean might not be strong or outgoing enough for her. But Sue stood her ground. She said that Jean adored her, treated her with kindness, and was willing to do anything for her happiness. For her, that was worth more than traditional masculinity. By the end of the visit, her father softened. He could see how much Sue cared for Jean, and even though he had his doubts, he gave his blessing. 2 months later, Sue and Jean were married. Every Sunday, they visited Sue's parents for dinner. And that's when a new opportunity appeared. A neighboring farmer was retiring and selling his land. Sue's father mentioned it over the dinner table, and Sue's eyes lit up. She had always loved farm life and dreamed of having her own place. The farm was expensive, but with her father's help, it became possible. Jean, however, looked a little stunned. Farming was completely new to him. He had grown up in the city. But Sue reassured him that together, they could make it work. Out of love for her, Jean agreed to the plan. On their first wedding anniversary, Sue and Jean moved into their new farmhouse. Right away, Sue threw herself into the outdoor work, milking cows, driving tractors, and managing the fields. Jean, on the other hand, naturally slipped into the role of running the household. He cooked, cleaned, unpacked, and even did the laundry. Sue would joke that she was the farmer, while Jean was the homemaker. At first, Jean resisted the idea. He worried what people, especially Sue's parents, would think of him spending more time in the kitchen than out in the fields. But Sue reassured him. Every role on a farm was important, and his contributions were just as valuable as hers. Her mother even encouraged it, gifting him aprons and telling him he was wonderful at keeping the home tidy. Slowly, Jean began to accept his new role, even though it wasn't what he imagined when they first got married. As time went on, their marriage found a unique balance. Sue was strong, practical, and happiest outdoors, while Jean kept the home running smoothly, cooked their meals, and cared for the smaller chores like feeding chickens and gathering eggs. Although Jean sometimes struggled with being seen as the wife of the farm, Sue reminded him that their marriage was a partnership. One couldn't succeed without the other. And deep down, Jean's love for Sue made him willing to adapt, even if it meant living in a way that was different from tradition. The story of Sue and Jean wasn't about fitting into expected roles. It was about creating their own version of love, one where both partners contributed in the way that suited them best. And that's where we'll leave their story for today. Sue and Jean remind us that relationships don't always have to follow the rules people expect. Sometimes, the strongest love comes from embracing each other's differences and building a life together in your own way. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about Sue and Jean's journey, be sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next part here on Luna's Truths. Also, if you like the video, please comment below for the next part of this story.